Hello, Transformers fans. This is Speedball, and today for you guys, I have for you from the Flametoys Furai Models series. I have for you the Autobot good for holograms, and a certain hate for a certain cassette bot. Yes, I have for you the Autobot Hound. And my friends, this is a very interesting and fun design that Flametoys has given us with Hound here for a number of good reasons. But first, one quick mention because I've been asked this a number of times before. Can our buddy here, Hound, can you transform him to his alt mode? No, sorry to say, my friends, but as we've seen with previous releases, Flame Toys does not tentatively usually design alt mode features into their model releases or figure releases. Now, yes, I know there is technically a correction to that because there is one figure they've done that can fully transform, but that's not with completely with Flame Toys. That was a collab release with Hasbro, so that's a whole different deal. But as for Hound here himself and previous models, no, they just can't. And this is not an uncommon thing, my friends. I've seen this already with a number of Transformer model releases from other brands as well. It just seems to be the case. I could be wrong on this, but it just seems the fact that whenever Hasbro license any of their rights out to any other brands to produce figures and models, there must be a stipulation somewhere that pretty much doesn't allow any other brand to produce transformable units with the release. And I know it stinks to hear, but I'm pretty sure that is the case, or at least close to why we never get a release with transformation capabilities. At least that's my thought, guys. I could be wrong. But honestly, though, I mean, I won't lie. I could see Hound transform because his body does have the proportions to give an alt mode. Though I can't say how far, and how well it would look, but I could see it maybe if we did have one. But honestly, I won't lie though, I probably would keep him in his robot mode no matter what because he just looks really cool. I like how they designed our buddy Hound here with the detailing and all the extra fun features he comes with, and even fun little Easter egg gimmicks they added, which I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not on at least this one. As you guys can see up here by his head, he has two colored eyes, which doesn't make sense for him. Well, that's not the case, of course. He actually has two standard eye colors, which is the blue you see in this one. But this eye, as you can see, is red for some reason, and that's because it's actually a scouter piece you can attach to the head. So yes, if you're wondering, can he scan his enemy power level with it? Yes, he can. But you can take that piece out if you didn't want it, of course. I just love it because it's a fun little Dragon Ball Z Easter egg kind of gimmick, I think. I love it. But besides that, of course, he comes with other fun little details and features, such as all the nice detailing on the body, all the small little details like here on the wrist here, and the facial detailing alone is nice as well. I do love that. And of course, his accessories and such look great on him, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But first, let's get into some quick articulation with him because for those who have been following the Flame Toys line will know is more of their recent units have been following the whole full plastic for polycaps and such replacements and so forth for their full articulation capability. Hound does have most of that, though it seems like the ab section here and the wrists do utilize, I can't say specifically if it's a polycap, but I'm pretty sure it was a type of polycap, which was the B2 runner in the kit, but it definitely had the more like polycap feel to the standard plastic you see here. I could be wrong though, so please forgive me. I'm mistaken, but I don't think you have anything to worry about because, as many will know from previous Flame Toys units, more specifically like the earliest releases, polycaps were a known flaw, unfortunately, with those kits because over time the polycaps will break. But I don't think in Hound's case that will be the case because, as I stated, all their more recent releases and so forth after certain numbers have been doing really well. So I don't think you have to worry about with that with Hound, and he's really good and stable. I haven't had any issues there. And articulation wise, as you can see, art can be a little stiff with the plastic on plastic, but you can pull off some really nice poses. And with the extra joints, as you see here, you can pull off some fun arm poses here. You can go full 360. He's got a great bend there. Ball jointed wrists. And as I mentioned already, his ab crunch, 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 crunch. That's fun. His legs, and of course with the skirt armor move, though so it tends to get stuck, but nothing to worry about. The legs can go about that far before hitting skirt armor, but that far back, so you don't have to worry there. You can go all the way out about this far, but note as you just saw, because of the ball joint and the setup in the thigh and his hip here, it will pop off every so often. But it's not a big deal. It doesn't break or anything so far. And as you can see, you can bend his leg all the way back this far. And as for his foot, it actually has a joint section in here with the ball joint, so you can actually extend the foot out. That's pretty cool. So extra posing and such, and you can pull it out and such and back and so forth. So that's pretty good for poses as well. And as for his head, real quick, it's on a ball joint and you can go full 360 as you can see. Though I've noticed though it can pop the head off a little bit too easily, but it no problems, it stays on. And lastly, well, one of the lastlies, you have some articulation here with the wheels on the back here. Nothing big, but just figured to show it off. Why not? And just for fun, you got the rotating shoulder rocket setup, which you can detach if you wanted, and you can even fold that over if you wanted. But if you're sticking with the whole Hound setup, you gotta have that on them. Now, other than that, you might ask, what other accessories does our good buddy here come with? Well, actually, he does come with a fair number of accessories, and it's quite actually surprising when it comes to the Flame Toys units in a sense, because most of the time we don't get a lot of extra accessories when it comes to like weapons and such. But Hound is a different story because he comes with this giant Gatling gun unit, which you can mount onto his shoulder, which I'll show you in a minute. But what's also cool is that it comes with a handle setup where you can actually have him hold it, so you can have it mounted or just in use with, and as you can see, with this extra handle for posing and such, which is really cool. Now, if you're wondering, no, the Gatling itself doesn't turn or anything. Sorry, but I still love it. It's a really cool, fun feature, especially for Hound, for good reasons too, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, he also has this really nice shoulder rocket setup, which also attaches into the shoulder. And as you can see, with a wee bit of paintwork I added, the detailing looks really nice in there. I really like that. He comes with a combat knife, which is so cool. I do love that with him because, it's military setup and, he's a military bot. So it's really cool he has a combat knife. And this grenade piece, which you can also, of course, once again, attach to his shoulder or into his hand, of course. And other than that, he will, of course, come with a fair number of hands for a number of reasons. One, you get a full set of closed hands just for fisticuffs. You got that. You got a set of these. Well, they're open hands, but you almost want to call them grapple hands because of the way the fingers are posed. Because that's what these always look like when I see these with Flame Toys. These more or less look like grapple hands than open hands kind of deal. And as I showed you already with the combat knife, this is the holding hand, so you can, of course, put his machine gun or any other weapons into it because it's posed the same way from both sides. And yes, as I just mentioned, you got this really cool machine gun unit that's right here. It looks great. It's fun to have. And it's very different for Hound because normally, if we're talking G1 wise, his accessories normally aren't that much. He'd have like a smaller gun and so forth, and holograms and so forth like that. But in this guy's case, no. Furahan's going all out. He's going, put it simple, he's going all Bayverse on us in a sense because he's loaded out with weapons, which is another fact. What I was mentioning with him is that this version of Hound, when they designed him, I feel like they added some of the Bayverse Hound into him in the sense of all the extra weapons. Because I don't remember many versions of Hound like from the comics or anything where he's decked out and loaded in weapons. I love it. But speaking of loaded, let me show you now how you can attach our weapons. As I mentioned, you would simply attach it to the shoulder setup here. Attach like that. Simple and easy. And they come and they attach in with no problem and they don't fall off or anything that I've seen. And pretty much that's the normal setup that you can do with Hound, as you can see in the box art and such. But I do want to mention one fun feature I noticed when playing around with it. As you can see, there's only 2 mounts, so you can only put so many weapons on them at a time. However, I discovered because of how the Gatling gun is set up, you can actually attach all of his accessory pieces by just attaching it to this piece here, and now you can have him carry his grenade launcher because if not, you just have that left over. In fact, it doesn't even mention this in the manual either. I just happened to figure that one out on my own. So if you, yeah, if you want an option now, there you go. It's a fun idea. And of course, you can swap the setup either way for those mountable weapons, of course. The only exception, of course, is the missile one, because it's only on this shoulder that has it. So other than that, my friends, yes, I really like this setup around the whole military. I'm gonna blow all the cons away, deal with all the extra accessories. Yeah, I definitely love it. And like I already mentioned before, the detailing on this kit is really nice. And I have to say, this guy's color separation is pretty nice actually compared to previous ones. And I said it because as you can see right here, this is the actual color separation sticker sheet, and pretty much all of it is just small detail stuff, which you can paint pretty easily. I know that's what I did easily. The only exception, of course, is the Autobot and the star sticker. I added a water slide for mine. I really preferred it, but I added the star, of course, for the accuracy. But everything else you can paint pretty easily. I mean, like you see here on the skirt armor, the wrist here, and over here, this brown section here on the leg, that's just all me. That was just me, and it's easy to do too. Now, a quick thing to ask. What about flaws? Did I have flaws with Hound? No, no, I didn't have any issues, and I mention this because, some of the Flame Toys kits do have their fair share of flaws. Especially what's most surprising is because for those who don't know this actually, Hound here is not technically one of their newest units in a sense. Now, what I mean is, yes, he was released back in 2024, which I know is now a couple years now, but he was actually originally revealed in 2017. Yes, you heard me correctly. Hound is that many years old in the sense of when he was first revealed to when he was actually officially released, and sadly, that's not an uncommon thing with flame toys. But the reason I mention this detail is because, well, Hound was technically designed around the same time as, well, all the original flame toys units, like the Seekers, the first Bumblebee, the Attack Mode Optimus, and things like that, which isn't a bad thing in that regards, unfortunately, except for the polycap flaw I mentioned before. Now, like I said, I don't think you're going to have that issue with Hound here, and I haven't heard anything about it anywhere about that problem. So I don't think that's going to be an issue with Hound here, but I figured to mention that just in case if you didn't know that about Hound here. But yes, I still love it. The assembly is really good, and I honestly can say why it took so long for Hound. At least one guess is, like I mentioned with the polycaps, I have a feeling Flame Toys decided to hold off on Hound in a sense was to improve their polycap issue by, of course, moving on to the plastic on plastic setup they do with most of their kits. So I figured in that regards, they probably figured to upgrade Hound in that regards as well to do the same, or else he probably would have had a few more polycaps on him, honestly. At least that's my guess, guys. I could be wrong. It could also just been priority reasons, just figured throw him off to the side, wait till we have an opening, and then throw him in. I hope I'm wrong on that one. That's just a guess. But other than that, my friends, yes, this is an interesting Hound. I love the design of him. The assembly was pretty easy to build. I didn't have any issues really. The only minor thing I must mention, because I've seen this with a number of their more recent units, is as you saw with the shoulder setup, some of the joint sections can get a bit tight and stiff. And I definitely noticed that flaw with the hips here for Hound. Luckily, it's nothing to worry about. There's an easy solution to fix that. All you have to do is just sand down the peg section inside the hip joint itself that connects the two pieces together for the ball joint setup. All you gotta do is sand it down just a little bit, just enough to where it's not gonna be loose, but enough to where it's not too tight. Because if not, and I literally know this because I was playing around with them that much, is if you don't, whenever you play around with the articulation in the waist here to pose them, well, because of how stiff that section will be, you're gonna pop the leg out every time. You're not gonna be able to pull off the best poses. Trust me, I know this. I tried. But I figured to just sand it down a little, and he works just fine. I can pose him any way I want with no issues. And as you can see, he's pretty sturdy. I can shake him like this all day with no major issues. And yeah, so before we end this, let's do a quick size comparison so you guys can see him compared with his fellow wave mates as well, such as his well-known Autobot leader and our G1 self, Optimus Prime. Yes, this is how big Hound looks to our G1 Hound, which in a sense actually now brings back to what I said before about the whole Bayverse idea with whole weapons. I feel this makes perfect sense in that regards because, Optimus has that more skinnier, battle ready, he's going to go kick some Khan's butt deal where he's not big and chunky, which is, a known thing with the Flame Toys G1 units we've been getting. They've been slimming them down, so to speak. But Hound's all decked out and ready to blow away Khans left and right. I like this. This is fun. And of course, I can't wait to add the upcoming Autobot, Ratchet, and Ironhide units to this because with the upcoming Bumblebee that's coming out this year, we're going to have so many Autobot characters to what we have previous, of course, to have a really cool G1 setup. I definitely like that. But speaking of other cons and such, here is the Flame Toys Furai Starscream unit we have. And yes, for those who, as I mentioned before about the polycap situation, yes, I did have to fix Starscream with mine because some of his did have that issue, unfortunately, but it's not hard to fix. I've learned that. And of course, luckily with the updated Acid Storm we got, a while back, they pretty much fixed the issue. The only problem is that unfortunately they've not reissued any of the earlier Seekers with the update yet, unfortunately. Maybe they'll do it later, I don't know. But as you guys can see, that's how the first releases look together, because as I mentioned, Hound was one of their first designs, and so was Starscream, so you guys can see how that looks. Now, if you're wondering, what about other Hounds by chance? Well, I don't have too many, but I do have one of my blocky Hounds I can show you, my Defender's version. And, well, he's literally a giant. He'd be the mini con for Hound in a sense. But ironically, I picked this to show you because, of course, the clear version literally reminds me of if Hound was here to create a hologram. This would be like what his hologram would look like for this one. I think that would be awesome. But speaking of other friends and such, how about our TF1 Blockies Hound? So you guys can, sorry, not Hound, sorry, Ironhide. I'm so sorry. As you guys can see, the champion class line of Blockies units compared to the Furai model scale, well, as you can see that, yeah, the Furai units are much bigger in a sense. So if you were ever wondering, there you go. And lastly, because since sadly he doesn't have an alt mode ability, I do, however, have an alt mode feature to show you with the wheels from Blockies Hound. So you guys can see what our big Hound here would have looked like, in a sense, if he had an alt mode capability. So yes, that is it, my friends. I thank you guys for coming, of course. I hope you all enjoying your hobby, of course. And my final thoughts, of course, is yes, I could definitely recommend Hound here with no problems. Though I must mention one important detail, because I've seen this too many times, and that is if you are interested in this model or any of the upcoming or previous Furai units, my advice, and this is a good one, if you're going to get it before they sell out. And not just because of the obvious reasons, unfortunately. In this case, it's mainly because sadly Flame Toys doesn't they don't tend to reissue too often. And if they do, it's not a lot of units. And unfortunately for Hound here, he might be one of those units that doesn't get a lot of reissues. So if you're gonna pick Hound up, I definitely recommend you pick him up sooner than later, my friends. And if I'm not mistaken at the time of this recording, he is still pretty available on a couple sites I know of. So if you do check him out, I definitely say get him before he sells out, because then that might be where it's going to be a challenge. All right, that is it for today. I thank you guys, and I hope to see you all next time.